Good morning, everyone. I'm so glad to be here. Backstage, before every talk, I have a tradition. I mix a cocktail. And it's not Jack and Jameson. That would be too easy, right? I don't drink anymore. I used to do a lot of Jack and Jameson, but that's back in the day. But I do my Jack Jameson cocktail, sugar-free Red Bull, and a Diet Mountain Dew, and I mix them. You ever seen Talladega Nights? I'm about to come at you like a spider monkey. I'm all jacked up on Mountain Dew. Someone might get scissor kicked in the back of the head. But, right? So, I was thinking this morning when I woke up, because I've done this 1,000 times, and I get so darn excited to be up here, I can't stand it. But I was thinking this morning, this month is my 25th anniversary of being in the insurance business. September, 25 years ago. So let's talk about my insurance journey. So 25, 26 years ago, I'm working for Frito-Lay. I'm delivering chips. And I lived in Casper, Wyoming. Could you pick up my accent? You knew I was from Wyoming, didn't you? Probably southern Wyoming. Actually, Wyoming by the way of Louisiana. That's a long story I'll explain here in a minute. But I'm in Casper, Wyoming working for Frito-Lay. Me and my beautiful wife of 37 years, right? For Kim, it's 37. For me, it's 37 years. For my poor wife, it's sort of like dog years. So she's been married for 200 and something years. But we have 5 kids. Kim's a stay-at-home mom. I'm working 60 hours a week or so, making $30,000 a year. Now, guys, I grew up, I always try to think of a nicer way to put this, but I can't, so I'm just going to say it. Guys, I grew up pure white trash. Any white trash in here? Woohoo! White trash. Right? When I was born, my dad was already in prison. So he committed murder when my mom was pregnant with me. So remember, here's my dad visiting him in prison. I grew up on welfare. My mom's on her 5th marriage. I have a brother in prison for life for triple homicide. I have another brother that died in prison for attempted murder. That's the way I grew up. And I was headed down the same path. I wasn't going to murder anyone. Well, unless you don't laugh at the right places today. So I do have the murder gene, so be careful. So, but when I was saying I was headed down the same path, I started drinking alcohol very, very early. First time I did drugs was with my mom. I was 10. So by the time I'm in high school, I like to say I was living the Sodom and Gomorrah life, right? Doing a lot of things that were not good. So I graduated high school, D- average, and I was the first person in the history of my family to ever to graduate high school. So then I decided to go to college. And I got accepted to LSU. Guys, it's not the Harvard of the South. They had to let me in. It was a state school. So I got a Pell Grant, and I'm at LSU. And the only bad thing about LSU is it's about an hour from New Orleans. And when you like to drink and do drugs, New Orleans ain't the best place for you to be hanging out, right? But that's where I hung out most of the time. Well, let's go back to July. I'll never forget the date. July the 19th, 1985. I'm 21 years old, flunking out of college. And 2 people knocked on my door. And they said, "Can we come in and give you a message about Christ?" And I said, "Yeah, but not too loud because I'm really hungover." They came in and gave me a message that day. God reached out his hand that day. And I took it. And I've never looked back. I've never looked back. God is good, isn't he? Doesn't care? Thank you. Because God sees everybody's potential. And he knew he had bigger plans for me. So by him reaching out to me that day, that led me to Casper, Wyoming. And I always said I wouldn't marry a Yankee woman. If she couldn't make grits and fried squirrel, forget it. Anybody here eat fried squirrel? Pretty good, right? Yeah, thank you. You're real white trash, thank you. Right? But I'm in Casper, Wyoming, and I'm at Joe Burtnall's house, and Joe Burtnall has 10 kids. And I'm at their house for dinner. And his second oldest daughter, Kim, was home from college for the weekend. And she come walking in the living room, and I looked up, and it was over. There was an angel standing above her going, "This is the one, don't blow it." But I said, "She's a Yankee." I said, "This is the one, don't blow it." I went home and wrote in my journal, I met the girl I'm going to marry today. I flew back to Louisiana and asked if I could ride her. Hey guys, this is back before cell phones, before emails, and before the internet. Way, way, way. Sort of like when the dinosaurs were still here, right? We fell in love in letters and a few phone calls. So I went and bought an engagement ring. We hadn't even been on a date yet. But she was flying down to visit me in Louisiana. And I went and bought an engagement ring. And before our very first date, I asked her to marry me. Hadn't even been on a date yet. And she says, "I'll marry you, but on one condition." I said, "What's that?" She says, "You're moving to Wyoming, because I sure in the heck ain't moving down here. Too many bugs, too many snakes." And she'd met just enough of my family to know she didn't want to raise kids around that. Man, it's hard to fly like an eagle when you're surrounded by turkeys. And I love my family, but man, they're a turkey farm, right? So I said, yes, I'll move to Louisiana. I'll move to Wyoming. We went on our first date that night after we got engaged. Sort of did it backwards. But she told me that night, 2 nights before she came home from college, she had a dream. And the dream was, you're going to meet your husband while you're home this weekend. Right? So she flies back home. I quit my job. I pack up everything that I own. And at that time, everything I owned, you could fit in an apple box. And I threw it in the back of my Datsun 280ZX in the middle of February. And I headed to Wyoming. Guys, a Datsun 280ZX is a pretty good southern car, not much of a northern car, right? There was a blizzard all the way from Colorado to Wyoming, and I had no money to stop at a hotel. Man, I was doing everything I could to keep that Z on the highway. And I just kept praying, Lord, let her be worth it. Please let her be worth it. Well, after 37 years, man, has she been worth it. I would not be standing here today without 2 people. God and my wife. He set me on the right path, and she's been busy perfecting me. She's not quite there yet, but she's working hard at it. So that's how I ended up there. So we get married, start having 5, we have 5 kids. I'm working at Frito-Lay, and I had a lot of time to think. And I thought, don't you want better for your kids? And I started thinking, how am I ever going to pay for college? How am I ever going to pay for a wedding? I want to take my kids to Disneyland, to Disney World. I want to do things other people I see do. And all I've ever had is a job. But you know what, guys? I was a garbage man. But I was the best dang garbage man they had. I was a dishwasher. But I was the best darn dishwasher they had. I sold water beds for a while. For you young folks, that's a bed with water in it. Really big in the 70s and 80s. I was selling them in the 90s on their way out. But I thought, all I ever had is a job. I need a career. But I didn't finish college. I mean, nobody could outwork Jack Jameson, but I wasn't the smartest guy in the room, right? So I started thinking about what I could do. So I asked my wife, I says, honey, I got to find a career. She goes, I know one thing, honey. We got to find a job to take advantage of your gift of bull crap. She said, you'll talk to a fence post an hour and a half before you realize it's not even talking back. So we got to find a job where you can talk a lot. So that Sunday paper, back when you used to get the paper, there was an ad in there to become a farmer's insurance agent. Send your resume to. And my wife goes, that's it. You could do insurance. I said, honey, I don't know anything about insurance. She goes, yeah, but our agent Doug with Prudential, all he does is talk a lot when we hand him a check. How hard can that be? So we got together my resume because it said, and guys, on that resume was garbage man, dishwasher, chip guy, waterbed salesman. I literally didn't think anybody would call me. But my wife got it together and put it in the mail. About 10 days later, I get a call from a farmer's district manager. This is Ken Jury, farmer's district manager. I said, yes, sir. He goes, I got your resume sitting on my desk. He goes, I must say, I've been doing this 40 years. This is the most pathetic resume I have ever seen. I go, thank you. Right? He goes, but because it's so pathetic, I think you make a great insurance agent. And he says, here's why. If you're willing to work the hours you've worked for the kind of jobs you had, for the pay that you've made, your resume tells me you have work ethic. See, young man, I can teach insurance. I cannot teach work ethic. Can you teach work ethic? You'll die trying, but it's hard, right? He says, there's another thing I can't teach, and that's personality. And if you've got a work ethic and you've got a personality, you can do this. He says, so why don't you come in for an interview to see if you've got the personality for this? He says, I see that you're married. Make sure you bring your wife because she needs to hear about this amazing opportunity. So 25 years ago, we walk into a district manager's office. Man, you guys know how district managers are. Raise your hand if you were recruited by a district manager. Most people, man, did he pile it on high and lay it on thick that day. Man, he talked about the money I could make. He talked about a lifestyle change. He talked about the trips we could qualify for. We sit there and listen to that for about 90 minutes. And we go out to the car. And my wife turns to me in the parking lot and says, honey, if half the crap that man just fed us came true, I'd be happy. Guys, we were in it for half the crap. That's all we wanted was half the crap. Now that I look back 25 years later, that DM undersold the opportunity that day. He actually undersold it. At some point in your life, everybody in this room, whether this is your first day or your 50th year, you were undersold this opportunity. Unfortunately, Some folks never take advantage of that opportunity. But it's never too late. So he goes, after he met me, he goes, man, you'd make a great insurance agent. Why don't you get your license? And when you get your license, come back and see me. I said, okay. Guys, I just told you I barely got out of high school and flunked out of college. Guys, it takes me an hour and a half to watch 60 Minutes. Okay? Some of you are going to get that joke in the middle of the night and you're going to laugh your butts off. Right? So I was working 60, 70 hours a week and I was trying to study. And I went in and I took my P&C test and I bombed it. And I told my wife, I'm too dumb to do this. She goes, no, I believe in you. Keep studying. I failed the P&C test 4 times. I failed the life test 3 times. And now I'm Mr. Life Insurance. Guys, I don't trust people that pass those tests the first time, by the way. But every time I failed the test, I wanted to quit, but my wife would not let me. So after 6 months, 8 months of struggle, I finally got through the test, and I was ready to go. And I said, you know, honey, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to work for Frito-Lay during the day. I went to work at 3 in the morning. I'm going to get home at 5 like I normally do. I'm going to have dinner with you and the kids, and then I'm going to sell insurance at night. She goes, what about sleep? I said, highly overrated. She goes, honey, if you give part-time effort, you guys can finish this, what do you get? Part-time results. She goes, no, you're quitting Frito-Lay, you're going all in. If you're going to do this, you're going all in. I go, honey, we can't go all in. We had $302 in the bank. No savings. A mortgage, 5 kids. I said, how are we going to pay the bills? She goes, well, we got credit cards. And I'm going to pull enough money off credit cards every month. Anybody ever been there? Pull money off credit cards to live? She goes, I'm going to pull money off credit cards every month. I'm going to get the mortgage paid and the kids fed. You go do what I know you can do. Let me worry about that. You're never going to look at another bill that comes into this house. She believed in me more than I believed in myself. But I said, okay. So I went to work. And here's what I decided. I may not be the smartest guy in the room, but nobody was going to outwork Jack Jameson. Nobody. And I started with 2 other agents. Same time, we were all in the district office in little cubicles. They were from Wyoming. I wasn't even from there, so they had an advantage over me. But I got to that district office at 6 every morning. Man, that was sleeping in for me. So I could start getting everything ready to cold call by 8 o'clock. Those other 2 agents that started with me, they stumbled in about 10 or 11. I never took a lunch. I had protein bars and apple. You could come talk to me about your insurance on your lunch hour. They took a 2 or 3 hour lunch. If I got home before 9 o'clock at night, my wife asked me what was wrong. Those agents left at 3 in the afternoon. I didn't work some Saturdays. I worked every Saturday. Do you know what I did every Saturday for the first year? Because I had to be doing something positive. I sold renter's insurance door to door to apartment complexes and mobile home parks. Man, I had my spiel down. I'd knock on your door and I'd say, your neighbor might be cooking crack. Which in Casper, Wyoming is a good possibility. And he might burn down this whole complex. If that happens, you want your stuff replaced? Man, I suspect my neighbor's cooking crack. There's a funny smell coming from over there. Man, I was the renter's insurance king. You know, a lot of those renters people, we all started off renting, became homeowners later, business owners, sold them life insurance. I go to my district manager and I go, hey, I want to do a commercial on the radio, but I don't have any money. You want to pay for it? He goes, well, what's the commercial? If you suspect your neighbor's cooking crack, call Jack. Pretty witty, huh? My DM goes, Jack, I love it, but it's never going to get through compliance. You can't mention crack and farmers insurance in the same sentence. Guys, the reason I bring up those other two agents, I'm here talking to you. Neither one of them are in the business any longer. I want you to remember this. Do not trade what you want most for what you want now. Let me repeat that. Do not trade what you want most for what you want now. So guys, I was working my tail off, and I got my first folio, we called it, first paycheck. Who remembers their first check? I bet you down to the penny, huh? I got my first folio, and it was $308 for the month. 5 kids and a mortgage. And I remember going back to the district office, and I go, man, I got my first folio. It was only $308. And one of those agents goes, hey, dude, I owe farmers $27.68. You're buying lunch. I didn't know you could owe the insurance company money, but apparently you can. But I had to go home and tell my wife. And I went home on my lunch hour because I saw my folio that morning. We only saw it once a month back in those days. And I was too embarrassed to tell her what it was in front of the kids. So I said, honey, can you come in the bedroom for a minute? I got something to tell you. And I shut the door. And I said, honey, I got my first check. She goes, great, what was it? I said, $308. She's like, honey, that's not bad for your first week. Oops. I said, honey, that's not for a week, that's for a month. And although she said nothing negative to me, I saw fear. I saw actual fear in her eyes. And if you've never seen fear in a significant other's eyes over finances, and I vowed to myself, I would never, ever see that look on her face again. Ever. I started going in earlier and staying later. I started picking up that phone. And I discovered a product that changed everything for me. Life insurance. I discovered if I sold a $100 a month life policy, I could make $600 just like that. I called it upfront money. Man, I didn't have any auto and home renewals coming in. Those renters renewals, those 50-cent renewals per policy hadn't hit yet. I needed all the upfront money I can get. If you are a new agent and you don't have a big book yet, you need upfront money. You need upfront money to buy leads. You need upfront money to market. You need upfront money to hire more help. So when I discovered that upfront money, I started selling the heck out of life insurance. My first year, I didn't even know what I was doing. I did it 68 issued and paid in Casper, Wyoming. That was the only year I never did 100. The year that I was a life agent of the year, I did 312 life policies in a town of 50,000 people with 12 other farmers agents. 300-something life policies may not be a big deal to Farm Bureau, but it was to farmers at the time. Because I needed upfront money. And then I remember my DM called me in and taught me about a life bonus. I said, wait a minute. You're telling me that Farmers is going to pay me to write life insurance, and they're going to give me a bonus on top of that? Do all the agents know about that, or is this just for me? He goes, no, all the agents know about it, but only about 12% of farmers agents in the United States get a life bonus consistently. I said, well, that's more upfront money. So I made a life bonus every single quarter I was an agent. Never missed one in 11 years. Highest level every single year. Right? So I started selling life insurance for the money. That's it. But you know what happens when you start selling so much life insurance? You start realizing that bad things happen to good people. Christy Yoder yesterday, what a great job. Give her another hand. Something bad happened to a wonderful family. And I hate that bad things happen to good people, and I wish I could stop bad things from happening to good people, but I can't. Did you know that on average 9,000 people a day pass away in the United States? A day. 9,000 people today, 9,000 people tomorrow. Is that you? Is that one of your family members? Is that one of your clients? If you do the math in your head, because I got it memorized, that's about 3.2 million people a year passing away in the United States. And do you know what all those deaths have in common? They're all untimely. You ever heard of a timely death? Man, Jack died just right time. And nobody thinks it's going to happen to them. That young lady yesterday got thrown a curveball that she didn't see coming. So, I think Troy Korsgarden, is Troy here? Okay. I saw him last night. You know what's cool about this business? About not trading what you want most for what you want now? The first person I ever heard speak in the insurance industry was Troy Korsgarden. And I was sitting there, I took 80 pages of notes. I still have those notes. And I thought, to be Troy Korsgarden. Then I got to know him, well, not so much. But love Troy. You know, if it wasn't for people like Troy, there'd be no Jack Jameson. But how cool is it that 25 years later, the guy with the most pathetic resume ever is up on stage. It's the same kind of stage that Troy shares, right? So pretty darn cool. But I had an agent say one time, you're not a real life insurance agent till you deliver your first death claim. You're not a real life insurance agent till you deliver your first death claim. Well, that came pretty early on in my career, and there's a couple of death claims that I'm going to share with you, if I can get through them, that are very personal and very important, and it set the foundation for the rest of my life. First family that I sold life insurance to besides my own family, Robert and Marva Humple. And I was sitting in their living room and wrote life insurance on him and her. And I says, hey, do you guys have any kids? She goes, yeah, I have a daughter. And I says, you guys have any grandkids? We have 3. I said, man, I've got a great life product for kids. Before you get freaky about it, Robert and Marva, nobody's trying to benefit from a child's death here. We write life insurance on kids for 3 reasons and 3 reasons only. First, we're going to lock in that insurability. Your kids are never going to be healthier than they are today, and more kids are becoming uninsurable with juvenile diabetes, with depression, anxiety medication. It's a world out there. So the first and most important thing is we're going to lock in their insurability. Man, don't sleep on juvenile policies. The year I was life agent, I did 312, I think. 150 of those were juvenile policies. When I got that award, the CEO didn't say how many of those were juvenile policies. They stay on the books. It's volume. They got 4 kids. I don't know about you, but most companies, you can't write 1 kid and not the other 3. Right? Volume. Right thing to do. I said, secondly, the second reason we're going to write life on your grandkids, we're going to lock in a rate. Every year you have a birthday, it gets more expensive. Never going to get it less than today. Third, we're going to do a whole life policy index, VUL, whatever you write. I said it's going to be a savings account on steroids. They can use that cash later to put down on a house. I've had people take cash value out of the juvenile policy to pay for their daughter's wedding. I had a lady the other day called me and said, do I have any cash value in my 21-year-old son's life policy? I said, ma'am, there's $27,000 in there. She goes, I need 10. I said, why? He just got arrested. I need it for legal fees. Okay, whatever works. She was glad to have that. She goes, well, I've got 3 grandkids. And I said, well, great thing, Marva. Do you know you guys can be the owner of the policy? Guys, don't forget about his grandparents. We're a gold mine. I was sitting by all 9 of my grandkids' crib waiting for them to turn 15 days old with my life app in my hand. I pay for my grandkids' life policy. Their parents are the beneficiary. But a lot of times the grandparents are more financially stable. Right? She goes, yeah, my daughter lives in a trailer park in Wright, Wyoming. Her husband's laid off from the oil field. My daughter works at Walmart and 7-Eleven trying to make ends meet. They can't afford it. I said, well, let's call and get their permission. She said, sure, Mom. We wrote a $100,000 life policy on her 3 grandkids. A few months later, the youngest granddaughter, 16, 18 months old, gets out of the crib in the middle of the night and falls out and gets lodged between the dresser and the wall and suffocates. Something bad just happened to a good family. And guys, here's what I say when I'm talking to people about juvenile policies too. This is the 3 reasons we're doing it. But ma'am, sir, if you lost a child, I know it's unfathomable, but if you did, are you going to work the next day? You're going to work 2 or 3 days from now? A month from now? See, people are going to tell you, if I lost a loved one, money would be nothing to me. I say, ma'am, sir, you say that now, but once the shock wears off, which is going to be so much quicker than you realize, this money is going to mean the world to you. See, because the first night you're going to cry yourself to sleep. The second night you're going to cry yourself to sleep. It's when that 3rd night comes and you're out of tears, and that's when reality sets in. I got to bury this child. Average funeral today, bare minimum, $10,000. Did you know that 70% of all Americans could not come up with enough money for a funeral today without putting it on a credit card? Yeah, let's put your child's life insurance, your burial on a credit card. So every time you get that credit card bill and you see Jack's funeral home, what you get to relive? Let's not do that. But once the shock wears off, that's when reality sets in. And the reality is, I've got to bury this child. The reality is, I got to bury my significant other. The reality is, we bought this house based on 2 incomes. We drive the cars we drive on 2 incomes. We go on vacations. Our kids are in college, are going to go to college based on 2 incomes. What happens when I take one income away forever? Are things going to change for the other one? Yes. It's, Mr. and Mrs. Client, it's not about you increasing your standard of living if one of you pass away. It's about you, what? At least keeping the same standard of living as you have today, which that young lady covered very well yesterday. They had to bury this girl. They didn't have $10,000. Guys, after the funeral and everything, and we paid out on that claim, I had the parents come into my office, and I said, I got a great idea. Why don't we take $10,000 per surviving child, the 2 that are left, and let's start a 529 college plan in memory of their sister, so they never forget her. They said, that's a great idea. I forgot I even did it. A couple of years ago, I'm on Facebook. And I'm Facebook friends with the grandpa. And he put on Facebook, today would have been my youngest granddaughter's sweet 16th birthday. Happy birthday, sweetie. I hope you're having a party in heaven. And I remember thinking, it's been 2 years? 14 years since she passed away? Wow. So I said something really nice on there, and he private messaged me and said, Jack, can I call you? I said, yes, sir. And he called me. He goes, Jack, I know you're all about life insurance, so let me share my story with you. My oldest granddaughter just graduated from the University of Wyoming with a 4.0 in business. She grew up in a trailer park. She'd been offered about a dozen jobs. I said, that's so cool. He goes, do you know how her college was paid for? I said, how? From that 529 college plan you set up. Without that, Jack, I'm not sure my granddaughter would even got to go to college. And my grandson just started his freshman year at University of Wyoming being paid for that 529 college plan. Jack, I just want to say thank you for what you've done for my family. You have affected my family in a positive way, maybe for generations to come. Guys, do you think there's any award, a commission check, a bonus check, that made me feel better than at that moment? What you're doing and not doing every day in your offices as it relates to life insurance is affecting families for generations to come. And I want everybody to decide today, not tomorrow, right now, how you want to start affecting families going forward in your agencies. In a positive way or a devastating way. Because it's like a domino effect. One good thing leads to another good thing, but good Lord, one bad thing leads to another bad thing. And I don't think you take your job serious enough. How blessed are you to be in a profession where you can make a difference in families' lives for generations to come? Second life story, more personal. I wrote life insurance. My wife has 9 brothers and sisters. And I wrote life insurance on Michael, her oldest brother. He worked for FedEx. And he's got a wife named Kim, same name as my wife. And they had 3 small boys, set of twins, another boy. And I said, Kim, we got to get life insurance on you, his wife. And she goes, why would I write life on me? I'm just a housewife. Just a housewife? I said, sweetie, you're the most important person in this family. I said, you're not around. Michael's got daycare now. That's an expense he doesn't have. Think Michael's going to keep up with this house, working 70 hours a week with 3 boys? He's going to have a maid come in. We got to get life insurance on you. She didn't want to do it, but she did. She got the preferred plus platinum elite rate. 25 years old, healthy as a horse. Did a $250,000 life policy on her, $19 a month. A couple of years later, Kim starts having back issues. Nobody can figure it out. Long story short, they do a scan of her spine. And I'll never forget the call at that office that day. And my wife calls me and goes, are you sitting down? Kim has so many tumors on her spine. They didn't even know where to start. What? She's only 27. That's not possible. Something bad just happened to a great family. So Kim starts chemo. Lost count of how many surgeries that poor girl had. But man, she fought and she fought and she fought. A couple of years later, it goes into remission. We thought, oh my gosh, she might beat it. But when it came back, as a young lady testified, it came back with a vengeance. Kim often told us, if I die from cancer, I won't be in my 20s. Nobody should have to die in their 20s. It's not fair. If cancer takes me, I'll be in my 30s. And we're like, okay, sweetie, whatever you say. Now let's fast forward. Kim's 29 and a half. She's down to 75 pounds. She doesn't recognize her kids. Hospice moves in. And I remember that first night the nurse says, according to her vitals, she's probably not going to make it through the night. So we gathered as a family. Kim made it through the first night. She made it through the second night. This went on for about 4 weeks. And the doctor and the nurse says, we do not know what's keeping this young lady alive. Medically, it does not make sense. Well, we found out what was keeping my beautiful sister-in-law alive. At 12:02, on her 30th birthday, my beautiful sister-in-law went home. And we said stubborn till the end. She made her 30s, not by much, but she made it. And we all sung happy birthday to her. And now my brother-in-law is a single dad. Who saw that coming? But there's something I did for this family that I'm so proud of. Do you guys have like accelerated death benefit rider on your life policies where you can take out a certain amount of face amount if you get a terminal illness? I call it this rider. Here's what I call it. If I got a client and I say, sir, if you left your doctor's office and he gave you 10 months to live, do you want to keep working or do you want to ride a bull named Fu Manchu? You're going to live like you're dying. Take your wife to Greece that she's always wanted to go. Take the kids to Disney World. I use that reference on a 20-something-year-old couple the other day, and they go, we don't get the reference. I go, Tim McGraw, never heard of him. I go, man, I got to come up with a Taylor Swift story now. Okay? But they had the accelerated death benefit rider on that. Before Kim got really, really bad at the end, and they saw the writing on the wall, the boys did not know. Josh, Aaron, and Ben didn't know their mom was going to make it, but Michael and Kim did. They exercised that right on that life policy. Michael took 2 months off from work. He only had 2 or 3 weeks vacation, but because of that rider, he got that advance on that death benefit. It paid for his time that he took off from work. They hopped in their minivan, and they traveled for 6 weeks as a family. They went to Disneyland. They went to the Grand Canyon. They videoed every waking moment of that trip. And I've watched those videos, and they're hard. But in those videos, my beautiful sister-in-law, who knew she wasn't going to be around, pulls each boy aside and tries to give a lifetime of counsel that only a mother could give. She tells them what kind of young men they need to become, what kind of fathers, what kind of husbands. She was gone 3 months after that trip, 3 or 4 months. Fast forward, her oldest son, Josh, got married last year in Utah. We went down for the wedding. And I hugged Josh. And I said, Josh, Uncle Jack and Aunt Kim was so proud of you. Michael never remarried. He's not remarried to this day. But I said, you grew up without a mom. And you turned out to be such a fine young man. I'll never forget what he whispered to me that day. Uncle Jack, because of you, I didn't grow up without my mom. I watch those videos every week, every month. And my daddy says, if it wasn't for Uncle Jack, we wouldn't have that trip and we wouldn't have those videos. So thank you, Uncle Jack. Again, is there an award? A commission check? You could have given me that made me feel better than that moment? I had a client that passed away in a freaky hunting accident. And I was in the front row of the funeral. I go to all my clients' funeral if possible. I didn't see this coming. The widow got up to talk. And she says, there's somebody here today that I want to introduce. He's the reason that I'm keeping my house. He's the reason I'm keeping my cars. He's the reason my kids get to stay in college. Jack, would you come up here for a minute? I've never been at a loss for words before in my life. She introduced me to the congregation as the man that was saving everything for her. I was just crazy. I set 15 life appointments after that funeral, unintentionally. How are you affecting families in your agency? And man, I know talking to people about life insurance makes them uncomfortable, but that's okay. Part of our job description is to have uncomfortable conversations about uncomfortable subjects. Because you're not having them, who is? New York Life, Prudential, worse yet, nobody? You know what I say to my clients? I would rather have an uncomfortable conversation with you right now than a much more uncomfortable conversation with your loved ones after you're gone. And I've had both. I've had a 7-month pregnant widow with a 2-year-old in tow sobbing at my desk because her 38-year-old husband was killed in an oil field accident and she had no life insurance. And all I could do is hold her. And I'll never forget through her sobs. She said, what am I supposed to do? He was making $150,000 a year. I make $8,000 a year as a part-time hairdresser. I'm going to lose everything. I didn't do my job. I didn't write life insurance on her husband. You talking about feeling uncomfortable? She was sobbing in my arms. But that uncomfortable conversation went on for a while. Because a couple of months later, she called and she asked my staff to cancel that homeowner's policy. That was the home that her husband had worked his tail off for. That was the backyard that he was going to teach his son to play catch in. She had a boy, he named him after his dad. That was going to be the deck that he had his daughter's sweet 16th birthday party and barbecued for his friends. But bad things happen to good people and things change. So not only did she lose her husband, but she lost the house and replaced it with a renter's policy in one of those crack apartments I was talking about. Talking about feeling uncomfortable that day when we did that transaction. Then she called a few weeks later and canceled both full coverage cars. Replaced it with a 1972 Ford pickup with 300,000 miles on it that a family friend gave her. It's all she could afford. We got made uncomfortable again that day. She called one last time to say, hey, I just wanted to say bye. I'm moving back to California in with my folks, who I don't have a good relationship with, but I need help with these kids. We got made uncomfortable one last time. Which uncomfortable conversation do you rather have? You know, if a widow walks into your office tomorrow, Monday, Tuesday, whenever you're back in your office, and she says, I lost my husband, you're going to say all the right things. What a great guy. You know what the next thing out of her mouth isn't going to be? So I was wondering, how does that sewer and drain coverage work on our house? Can we go over that glass program? What's my deductible? Do I have towing on my cars? All that coverage that you thought was so important, don't get me wrong, ain't going to mean anything to her. She's got one question for you, one policy she cares about. How much life insurance did my husband have with you? And I hope you can flip around that screen proudly and say, this much, let's get the claim started. Because if not, things are about to get uncomfortable. So, I started selling life for the money. Guys, I paid out 12 more death claims as an agent, was involved in about 50 as a district manager. And every single time, that check meant the world to someone. It didn't bring anybody back. It didn't make them miss anybody any less. But it eased someone's burden. And we are in the business of easing someone's burden in their worst times of their life. That's what we get to do. So now, do you know why I sell life insurance now? Because it's our moral obligation. It is our moral obligation to protect our clients in every aspect of their lives. Not what we pick and choose, but every aspect of their life. And when you come, that day you come to realize that, everything will change for you. What was my first paycheck? Anybody remember the amount? Thank you. Somebody the other day said 306. I said, don't you cut me that $2. That was a renter's policy. There's another folio I'll never forget. A couple of years later, because I got after it, man. I got after it. I got a folio, and it was $31,000, which to me at that time, wow. And my wife says to me, do you know that you just made more in a month than it used to take you a year to make, working 60, 70 hours a week? We just held each other and cried. We felt guilty for about that long. I was undersold the opportunity. I was undersold it. In closing, the first positive male role model in my life was my father-in-law. Never had a positive male role model growing up in my entire life until I met him. He's a minister. Passed away a couple of years ago. Man, I miss him. But he says to me one time, do you know that God is using insurance for you to get in front of people and to teach people and to change people's lives? Because God works that way. He works in mysterious ways. He goes, because, you know, Jack, God is probably not going to ask you how many life policies you sold on Judgment Day. But he is going to ask you how many people you helped. And if insurance is the mean to helping people, then that's okay too. Let me ask you a question. Are you letting God use you to help people? Because if you do, he will. One of my favorite scriptures is don't hide your light under a bushel. Quit hiding your light under a bushel. Everybody in this room has a light. And it's the brightest light of all because it's your light. Before, over in the green room, I say the same prayer after I get all hopped up on Mountain Dew. Then I talk real fast to God like an auctioneer. But I said, God, if I touch one person in this audience today, and I make a difference in one person's life or their careers, it was worth my trip here. I don't believe in coincidences. You're here today for a reason. I'm here today for a reason. Don't forget that. God bless you. Appreciate you. Thank you, guys.